got him, no problem.
Welcome to the great state of Maine. Get your coffee. Today I want to talk about a few myths. A few myths and just my thoughts on case preparation for reloading. It seems like there's a whole bunch of... I know it's going to sound like I'm making fun of people and all of that, but I'm not. I really am not. But when I watch other reloading channels on YouTube and even different people that I get around at the shooting range, there is so much concentration now on case preparation. I mean, I have never seen so much concentration on case preparation. And what I mean by is shiny, 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 shiny pockets, primer pockets, and I mean they're shinier than when they come from the factory. Let's put it that way. What's the myth here? The myth is you don't have to clean a case at all whatsoever. It wasn't until the early 1970s before case tumblers came around. So I would imagine that they didn't clean too much brass before 1970. That ought to tell you something. When I got into reloading, I couldn't afford a tumbler. That was a big ticket item. When you compared to, I had to buy my press, I had to buy all the stuff to get started. So a tumbler was not on my list at all to get. So I didn't tumble. I didn't clean my brass for probably the first 5 years minimum. I know other reloaders that started out the same way. They didn't clean their brass for 10 and 15 years before they got a tumbler. So that ought to tell you something. I need a cough drop or something. And it's the same thing with cleaning the pockets, the primer pocket. We're going to get into trouble here. You don't need to clean the primer pocket either. Now I do, and I've showed you in my videos that I do. But my idea of cleaning the pocket is getting in there with that little tool and just sweeping it out a little bit. Get a little bit of the crud out of the bottom. Why do I say you don't need to do that? Well, if you go to the range and you take 100 rounds of prepped 223, pockets cleaned, whistle, you know, same thing with a flash hole. Too much time being spent on cleaning pockets and worrying about that flash hole, in my estimation as a reloader. But do a test. Take your 50 rounds of everything you can do to that primer pocket, and then to that flash hole, and then take 50 rounds that you don't do anything to. Go to the range and give it an honest test. Shoot them things as honestly as you possibly can, and then come back with the results. You won't find any difference. That's not the end of the cartridge that matters. The primer pocket, the flash hole, that's not the part that matters. Period. Do I clean them up once in a while? Yes, I clean them up. Pistol rounds, I hardly ever do a pistol round. I punch the primer out, I push a new one in. And I could shoot some pretty tight groups with my pistol. So that end of the shell is not the end you need to be worrying about. Plain and simple. And neither is having it shiny, shiny, shiny. That's only cosmetic. You know, I like a shiny cell. I throw them in my tumbler, I get them cleaned up. There's my tumbled, cleaned brass. This is brass from John in Greenville. Thank you very much. All that was tumbled in walnut. Shiny enough for me. And then I reload them. I have a wet tumbler and I have a dry tumbler. I personally think the wet tumbler is too much work. I mean, I'm just as happy throwing them in the dry tumbler, coming up here, taking them out, and reloading them. Shiny, shiny, shiny. It does a nice job. There's nothing, I mean, I can do a video sometime on my tumbler. As far as I'm concerned, they're just about, they're as good as what comes out of that wet tumbler. Let's put it that way. And I know that there's a lot of people, especially nowadays, if you ain't got a wet tumbler, you're not doing anything. Well, this camp doesn't believe that, and that's kind of what this video is kind of about. Let's talk about that case, and let's talk about the other end. And this video is going to lead into another video. It's the trimming. It's the trimming of the case is where you're going to notice a difference. Because as you work a piece of brass, you shoot it, you come back here, you resize it, it stretches it out. It stretches the mouth of that case out a little bit each time that you shoot it. So what I do when I first start out with some new brass, you see I just got a bunch of brass for the 308. Well, I'll sit down with my case trimmer and I'll trim them once. I'll go through them. I'll find a number that works for the majority. I'll measure a few, and then you've got your book. You can get in your book, and you can get that. You can get that measurement from your book. Okay, so here's the follow-up on trimming the 308 Winchester brass that I have. We had so many people share their brass with us. Earlier in the video, I talked about the case overall length. This is 2.015. None of this brass will reach that measurement. I will show you here in a minute. That is what I believe is the maximum that you want this brass to stretch out to in its lifetime. And you definitely want to stay below that. So there's the book where you get the numbers from. I'll tell you right now, so far, every piece of brass that I've measured on the 308 has been less than the mark that's in the book by 2 or 3 thousandths. So what I do is I go through my pile of brass, I find something, I'll go through and I'll measure a bunch, and if they're the really, really short ones get set aside. And if there's a bunch that kind of fall in the same area, then that's the number I'll pick for my trimming. Now you only need to trim this brass about every 5 times that you shoot it. You don't need to trim it every time you shoot it. But maybe on the 5th time, 6th time, good idea to get in there and trim your brass. The other thing that happens to a piece of brass as it is stretching is it doesn't stretch square. So one side of the brass might be taller than the other, and one side might be shorter than the other. It's not square on the top. That's another reason. When you're doing your trimming, you'll see that. You'll see sometimes you'll get to the end of your trimming, and one side got trimmed a lot, and the other side barely got touched. It's shiny, so you know it's at the right depth, but that's why you trim your brass. That's the end that matters, you know. I really can't make it any plainer than that. I don't care how many videos you're watching on YouTube that are getting these cases pristine, pristine, pristine. That doesn't matter. Do you really think 150 years ago they worried about if cases were pristine in the way that they looked? I doubt it. There's powder, there's a primer, and there's a bullet. It all has to go together. It all has to match. It has nothing to do with a piece of brass that's shiny, 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 like it just went through the wash machine. But anyway, I'm not picking on people. I'm just trying to, I know I get some great questions. And I'm going to do a couple of videos here on it. This was one of them. So now we're going to move into the trimming of this. I'm going to trim 100. I'm not bringing you along for the whole 100, but I'll bring you along so you can at least get a feel for it. What my trimming setup is. I know I make fun of electricity in the reloading room, but you know, it's only because if you're going to punch out 10,000 rounds, then all right. Power, but I'm vintage. I'm vintage all the way. I watched. I forget what they called it the other day. Even with my deburring tool, they were kind of making fun of it. Well, let me tell you, this technology's been around, still working. And if you're punching out 100 or 200, I've been punching out 3 boxes of 38 brass all week in less than an hour. So I come up here with a cup of coffee, I sit down, my brass is, what I normally do is I'll prep it the night before, and then in the morning I'll come up, put the powder to it, and then put the bullets in. So I have roughly about an hour's worth of time in 60 pieces of 38 brass. That's more than fast enough for me to punch out bullets. Any more than that, I don't know if, you know, I can't shoot them that fast, let's put it that way. I'm just kidding. I can sit there and yank the trigger as fast as anyone. But my point is that if you can punch out 100 rounds in an hour or so, that's 5 boxes of bullets. That's why I don't get this reloading room too automated. I was watching another video. He's a really good reload. His name is Fortune Cookie. He made 8,000 rounds. Now, he's got the progressive press, all of that, and he was all set up and ready to go. I think, no, it wasn't 8,000, 800 rounds in about 3 hours. That's a lot of bullets. That's a lot of bullets. And I'm pretty sure they were 38s. But if you take that same math with my vintage stuff, and I do 60 rounds, 3 boxes. I do 3 boxes in about an hour. You know, with 3 hours, I would have 15 boxes of 38. Well, that's a lot of bullets too. If you headed to the range on Saturday, you know, if you set up here, and that's what I've done this week, is I punched out about 600 pieces of 38s, all for target shooting. Now it's all for the family, but that's my point with this vintage equipment, and we're going to go over some more of this vintage equipment as we go along. But just keep that in mind when you're trying to get into this stuff. I still fall on the same sword as the very first video of this series. Keep it simple, stupid. Keep it simple, stupid keeps the cost down. I also have another video coming out that I'm working on right now. I've been 2 months putting it all together, so I won't get into too much about it. But I have, all I'm going to do right now is just throw out a little teaser, and then we will go from there. The teaser is that I have put up, by the last 2 months, I have been working on eBay to gather up all of the equipment that I would need if I was a brand new person to reloading. And right now, and you'll be very surprised at the equipment that I have bought, right now I am well under $150. I'm well under $150, and I haven't done the math as far as that close, but I believe I'm under $125. So I have set up a complete setup for under 125, 150, somewhere in that area. So that's the teaser. And the teaser is I'm going to bring out all this equipment, I'm going to lay it out on the table, and I'm going to show you. It takes a little bit of patience, it takes a little bit of work on your part, but it was fun to do, and you get a really good education too, because some of this stuff, you know, I had no idea what it sold for. So while you're learning that, you're also learning what some of this stuff does, and you're learning where to find it. So that's a teaser for a video that will be out pretty darn quick. Like I said, I'm right in the middle of making it. It's taken me 2 months to gather up the stuff. And we can thank all the Patreon members for that video. I took the money from 2 months worth of Patreon stuff, and that's how we purchased this setup. One, to do this video, but two, to have that equipment on hand. What I wanted to do is, my oldest grandson is 11 years old. So by putting this kit together, he will have a complete setup that he can work at a bench and a desk and reload right alongside Pupper. So that was my plan, and the other plan was just to get rid of that myth that getting into reloading is super, super expensive, because I just did it for $150. So anyways, hey, you guys have a great week, and I will see you in the next video.